Hi, my name is Brigid Kenney. I'm a Senior Policy Advisor at the Maryland Department of the Environment, and I am more or less the point person for all things Marcellus Shale in Maryland. I want to give you an update today on what's been happening with the Governor's Marcellus Shale Advisory Commission. First of all, gas development is not really new in Maryland. In the 1950s and 60s, there were about several hundred production wells drilled. Most of them have now been depleted. The gas has been completely removed from them, and the wells that are shown in orange there are actually used to store natural gas in the depleted reservoir so that it's available for times of high need. Gas can only move through the pipeline at about 20 or 30 miles an hour. So you need to have large reservoirs along the way to meet peak demand. So there are about 90 wells that are used for storage. There are 6 or 7 that are still producing, but at very low levels. And we got a couple of applications beginning in 2009 for Marcellus Shale wells, but all those applications have been withdrawn. And right now we have no pending applications, and no Marcellus Shale drilling has occurred yet. So the Marcellus Shale is not that big green blob. That's the Utica Shale, which underlies the Marcellus. But the Marcellus is in the yellow boundary that's shown there. In Maryland, it's just in Garrett County and part of Allegheny in places where they think it might be economically recoverable. We've known that the gas is there for many, many years, but it was never economic to extract it until there were advances in 2 things, horizontal drilling and high-volume hydraulic fracturing. That plus a peak in gas prices in about 2008 started the Marcellus Shale rush going. Maryland only has about 2% of the Marcellus Shale. Whatever we decide is not going to make a difference on the national or international scale, but it has the potential to make a big difference to Western Maryland. Shale gas comes in 3 varieties. Dry, which has nothing to do with water. It just means that it's almost all methane or CH4. Wet gas that has some natural gas liquids like propane and ethane along with the natural gas. That is much more valuable than natural gas itself because those compounds are used for feedstocks in plastics and other materials. And then at the far edge you have wet gas, which has oil as well as natural gas liquids. And that is the most valuable of all, which is why the drilling rigs all migrated west a couple of years ago. So a typical Marcellus Shale well would look like this. It's not to scale. Starting at the surface, a drill rig would drill down vertically until a couple of hundred feet before the target formation. So in Maryland, the Marcellus is like 5,000 to 9,000 feet deep. So they'd be drilling vertically down about a mile until they reach a kickoff point where they change drill rigs, use a directional drill rig that can be very tightly controlled, and they begin to turn the the drill rig, and then they drill horizontally through the target formation, the Marcellus Shale. There are casing, steel casing, and cementing that's done along the way to protect drinking water resources and to prevent the communication and movement of contaminants. A big controversy is how effective the casing and cement are. It's never perfect. So when the horizontal well is completely drilled and cased and cemented, you have now completely isolated the target formation from your well. How are you going to get the gas out? Well, it's a 3-step process. First, they put down explosives in a perforation gun or a perf gun, and they actually blow holes through the steel casing and the piping to create a connection between the target formation, the shale, and the well. But that only opens up a little bit of the gas because it's trapped in this very tight shale. It's trapped in small particles. So the next step is the hydraulic fracturing, where a mixture of water, sand, and chemicals is forced down under very high pressure. And that pressure, that fracking fluid, jumps out of those perk holes into the beginning fractures that were made and causes those fractures to expand, somewhat like broken glass, where the initial hole might start to spread, but it happens very fast. So that creates a lot more surface area and opens up these small pores where the gas has been trapped for millennia and it's able to flow into the well. I don't know if there's really any such thing as a typical fracking fluid, but to the extent you can generalize, it might have 95% water, 4 or 5% sand, and the remaining is chemicals. The chemicals all have a purpose. Some of them control bacteria, some prevent scaling, some reduce friction so that the pressure can be applied. This very high pressure can be applied. Some of them are chemicals that, the names would be familiar to you, and they're probably, some of them are probably in your garage or under your kitchen sink, but you wouldn't want to drink those chemicals, would you? Well, people don't want to drink these chemicals either, so a big concern is making sure we know what those chemicals are, where they're going, and that they are managed properly and that they're not getting into the drinking water. This may be too dark for you to see, but there is floating at the top a sort of a land surface that has 4 different well pads on it. 1, 2, 3, 4 well pads. And from each of these pads, 6 wells have been drilled. When they get to the bottom, they go out in different directions so that from a single well pad, you may be able to access a square mile or more of shale. When the fracturing is done, the geologists tell me that the fractures form perpendicular to the orientation of least compressive strength. You all got that? That means that they come out sideways like that, sort of like a knife blade coming out sideways. And then when they're fracked, that expands into additional smaller fractures. And after the fracking is done, then you go into the production stage, where all the little gas molecules can now enter the pipe and come up all the way to the surface, where they are trapped or captured, put into gathering lines and then transmission lines. When we got the first couple of applications for Marcellus Shale wells in 2009, a lot of people were very concerned about it because they could see what was happening in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania reacted to the Marcellus Shale drilling with what you might call irrational exuberance. They embraced it wholeheartedly before they had any of their regulatory programs in place. They didn't have the right casing standards. They didn't have cementing standards. They didn't have inspectors. There were some real bad wells put in Pennsylvania. So in Maryland, some legislators thought that we should actually have a moratorium, a formal moratorium, to do a study on Marcellus Shale. That bill did not pass, and so after that session, Governor O'Malley issued an executive order in June of 2011 that directed 2 agencies, my agency, MDE, and the Department of Natural Resources, to undertake a study and report back to the Governor and the General Assembly. We're doing that in consultation with an advisory commission. They are providing us guidance and feedback and are very instrumental in the process, but they are neither doing the study nor writing the report. The reports will deal with liability issues, funding issues like severance tax, best practices and recommendations for changes to the laws and the regulations. When this report is done, it will feed into the decision of whether and how Marcellus Shale drilling can be done in Maryland without unacceptable risk. So some of the concerns that are legitimate concerns and need to be addressed, you can also think of them as challenges that have to be overcome. But a big concern is the contamination of drinking water, either by methane or by chemicals. You don't want to be able to light your kitchen faucet on fire. Damage to aquatic living resources. Shale wells involve paving over a lot of land, crossing a lot of streams, cutting down some forest. There can be fragmentation of the forest and habitat, and through sedimentation, damage to aquatic living resources. There's always a potential for spills and leaks and the possibility of illegal disposal of fracking fluids or flowback or cuttings. There is air pollution, both by fugitive methane, methane being a very powerful greenhouse gas, but also because they bring a great deal of diesel-fueled engines to the drill site. Often these sites are not near any electrical transmission line, and they have no access to electrical power. So even if they're going to use an electric drill, they will bring in diesel-fired electrical generators on the site. And then when they do the fracking, they bring in these huge truck-mounted pumps and mixing units that are also powered by diesel, and they put out a lot of air pollution. Each well takes about 5 to 7 million gallons of water to frack, and usually all of that water arrives at the site on trucks. So there is a lot of truck traffic associated with Marcellus Shale development, and that has an impact on traffic, on roads, on bridges, and on highway safety. And lastly, well, there are probably others, but lastly, there's your community impacts. With Marcellus Shale drilling, there will be winners and losers. Your neighbor might become a shaleionaire because they leased out their mineral rights, whereas you didn't own your mineral rights. They're not taking your gas. Actually, they're taking the gas under your land, but you don't profit from it, and you're just going to experience all the inconvenience and downside. In some communities, this has been a very corrosive force. When shale drilling is extremely rapid, there is an influx of workers, usually from out of state. You find rental prices going up, an overburdening of the local health care facilities, sometimes the social services. In North Dakota, there's been a dramatic increase in assault and battery, drunk driving, due probably to the huge number of drillers from out of state that have come in. So what we're looking at is how to reduce the risk as low as we can of any bad impacts. And then we'll do an analysis to figure out whether if we do that, what's the remaining risk, how bad is it? And the most innovative of the practices that we've come up with, which was advocated mostly by the Department of Natural Resources, is for a comprehensive gas drilling plan. This would require a company to plot out at least 5 years in the future where they were going to drill, where they were going to put the well pads, where they were going to put the roads, where they were going to put the pipelines, so that it could be planned in a way that would minimize damage to the environment and interference with the community. It also has the potential to save the companies some money, because there is a possibility of co-locating some of these lines with other companies' facilities that would make it less expensive. We're going to propose that if drilling is allowed, there be some very strong regulations on air emissions, cement and casing standards, secondary containment for things stored on site, a good spill prevention control and countermeasure plan, and setbacks to protect people in sensitive areas. The setbacks, if we adopted every setback that has been suggested to us, there would be no land on which you could drill in Garrett or Allegheny County. But we are proposing some very restrictive setbacks on the surface disturbance. You could still drill under some of these lands that are off limit to surface disturbance, but you wouldn't be able to locate anything on the top. If drilling is allowed, and after several years we have a higher level of confidence that it can be done safely, and that not only we but the companies know of any peculiarities in Maryland, then maybe we could alter the setback requirements a little bit. But we're proposing pretty strict ones. The legislature a couple of years ago gave us the authority to levy a fee on the permits for oil and gas wells. The gas wells are re-permitted every 5 years. We're allowed to set the fee at whatever level is necessary to run the program. We haven't acted on that since we got the authorization, because we haven't figured out yet how expensive the program is going to be to run. But we will set the fee high enough to fund a robust inspection and enforcement program. And the last thing here is a Surface Owners Protection Act, especially for people who own the surface rights and not the mineral rights. Having someone come onto your land and drill, which they have the right to do, can be extremely disruptive and damaging. And many states have enacted surface owners protection rights which seek to reach a balance on the activities and to compensate the surface owner for any damage or inconvenience. Maryland doesn't have one yet. The Advisory Commission tried to develop one. They couldn't reach agreement on a great many of the provisions, and nothing was introduced, but that is on the long-term to-do list, is to get a good Surface Owners Protection Act. So where we are right now is on the best practices part. We issued our draft report in June of 2013. We got more than 4,000 comments on it. We have released some of the response to comments, and we'll be releasing the rest of them within a few days. And we hope to have the final best practices report done at the end of May. The Regional Economic Studies Institute at Towson University is doing an economic study that will be done in a couple months. Actually, it will be done this month. It's done in May. And there is a public health report being done by the Maryland Institute for Applied Environmental Health at the University of Maryland. They're to finish their report in June. And we're wrapping up some other issues such as traffic impacts and emergency response. There are many, many challenging issues here. The final report was under the original executive order to have been delivered in August of 2014. We're missing that, but we think we're going to be able to do it by the fall of 2014, and it will integrate everything we've learned in the last 3 years. It will integrate the health study and the risk assessment and the traffic assessment and the best practices. So we'll be making findings and recommendations. The rest of it is just some quick visuals. This is why you need a Surface Owners Protection Act. I don't know if you can see this house. This was someone's dream house. They bought the land, they built their house, they didn't have the mineral rights, and whoever had the mineral rights rented it or leased it to a company that put in these enormous ponds, did all this grading, cut down all these trees and put the pad in. And these people were helpless. We don't want Marylanders to be helpless. We want to find the right balance so that this can go forward and it's safe. This was a picture of a drilling site in West Virginia. It just gives you an idea of the very extensive grading that is necessary to establish the pad and the ponds if you're in a hilly area like West Virginia or Maryland. This is how busy the pad might look during hydraulic fracturing itself. Actually, there were 2 wells being fracked on this pad at the same time. You can drill multiple wells on a single pad, as you understand it. It's unusual to frack two at the same time. These trucks are holding the pumps that pressurize the hydraulic fluid, and materials are stored in some of these other containers. When the industry takes the picture, the sun's always shining. It looks like, when I take the picture, it's freezing rain up in Pennsylvania. This is a completed well site on which just one well had been established. They were going to come back and do another 7 or 8 or 9 later on. But it gives you the area occupied by the well pad is a pretty extensive area. It's like 4 or 5 acres, but it's empty except for a few things. First, you have the well itself, and this is what's known as a Christmas tree. It's what they call the upper part of the well that has the valves and controls on it. With the solar panels, they generate enough electricity to use telemetry to send real-time data to a control center, so they don't have to visit the well so often. This well had some wet gas in it, and so there was this building on the well pad to separate the water from the gas, and the water was stored in these tanks. In addition to get the gas to market, you have to install the pipelines. Pipelines are linear features. If they go through forests, they fragment the forest, knock down the trees. They give you a real opportunity for erosion and sediment nightmares. If it's done right, when it's done, it looks pretty good. It looks like a meadow or a regular utility right-of-way. But if it's a new right-of-way, then it has fragmented the forest in a way that can be very damaging, especially to interior forest-dwelling species. If you want more information, if you go to MDE's website, right smack dab in the middle of the website is the Marcellus Shale Safe Drilling Initiative, and if you click on that, you will get probably more information than you ever wanted or needed, including minutes of all our meetings and draft reports. So that is my quick summary of Marcellus Shale.
Thank you.